Miraculous Youngster was a legendary team in Chinese Overwatch. Not only did they dominate the lion's share of 2017's events, but they were also competitive with a number of top South Korean teams. From RunAway to Lunatic-Hai, MY was a team to be reckoned with, and due to financial troubles and stress, the team fell from its peak at the tail end of 2017 and now are scattered amongst the Overwatch League. But what if they stayed together? What if they were all of age? What if PEAK Miraculous Youngster played in Overwatch League Season 1? Buckle up, kids. We're going for a trip down memory lane for this week's alternate Overwatch history. First, I want to give a big thank you to Jonathan Y. Wu and Leg is Late for the suggestion. If you have a topic you want tackled, leave it in the comments down below, and feel free to leave your suggestions on Twitter as well. If I think it's interesting, I'll shout you out and make it the next episode in the series. So this week, more Chinese Overwatch, huh? Who would have thought? Not me. So again, to preface this, Overwatch League Season 1 meets Miraculous Youngster. Who wins? We have to first address the age discrepancy issue. Obviously, their star player Leave is very young at this point. We have to kind of bump him up and make him of age, right? So that's step one. Step two is we kind of have to go over the Overwatch League Season 1 meta. So in Stage 1, there was a lot of Mercy dive, a lot of Pharah. Stage 2 is very centered around Widowmaker. Stage 3, Tracer, and again, Stage 1 through 3, there's a lot of moving parts. A lot of these metas kind of were a little bit more malleable. But Stage 4 was very much centered around Double Sniper, which is a highlight for this team once we get into the roster. That said, when we go into the Overwatch League Season 1 playoffs, that's when we got into the Halt Hook, single healer, Mercy kind of weird composition. That's where you saw a lot of the Zenyatta's flex off. You saw Badoshan playing Tracer for some ungodly reason, but hey, it worked out and they got a title, so can't blame them. And if we're going to extend this to Overwatch League Season 2, how would this team play in GOATs? So let's break down the roster and see where they shine and where they might falter. So to start us off at the top, we have our captain and main support, Creed. Now, currently, Creed's an assistant coach for the Guangzhou Charge, but back in the day, he was kind of not the best main support, but certainly not the worst by a long stretch. This was a player that kind of was the glue guy. He was somebody that you could rely on to perform well on a number of different heroes, but was primarily playing Lucio due to the meta at the time. Playing alongside Creed, we had Zhu Fenjun, who was their flex support, who we might know better as the Shanghai Dragons' former flex support, Sky. Now, this is someone who did very well for themselves domestically, but once they got promoted into the Overwatch League, for whatever reason, the Shanghai Dragons did kind of taint this guy's memory. I will say at World Cup, he did look a little bit better, but it's safe to say that Sky would not be a strong flex support when you compare him to the likes of Jonak and Badoshan at the time. Next on the list, we have to start with the tanks, and their main tank is someone who I have an undoubted love-hate relationship with, and that is Jichirin. Now, at the time with MY, during 2017 and their domestic run, this was their aggressive main tank that they kind of not necessarily played around, but fit their style. Playing alongside Jichirin is Late Young, who's somebody that's incredibly vocal and is a rock at flex tank. Very solid D.Va at the time, but more primarily kind of came into his own with Zarya in the GOATS meta. Now we get to the fun bits. Now we get to the DPS, who I'll talk about as a duo, and that is Yang Zhalong and Leave. Leave is the young prodigy that's coming out of China. You've seen him at World Cup. You will see him with the Chengdu Hunters when they play later on this season in the Overwatch League. But these two players complement each other so well. Leave has such a diverse hero pool, and Yang Zhalong always played around with whatever Leave wanted to play. If Leave was playing Genji, and Yang Zhalong would play Tracer, but I won't go on and glow about this DPS duo for too much longer. Their ace in the hole is head coach Ray, a name that might sound familiar if you watch the Overwatch League and are a fan of the Chengdu Hunters. Ray comes from Miraculous Youngster and performed extremely well with this team. He was quick to integrate both Doomfist and Sombra into their lineup in 2017. With Ray at the helm, who's to say that they don't find their own style and make it into the playoffs in Overwatch League Season 1? Now, before we answer any of those questions, we kind of have to project this team onto some of these metas and see how they'd look. If Overwatch League Season 1, Stage 1's meta was more Mercy dive, that's when we had those resets, that's when we had those incredibly messy team fights, I don't think MY would have a problem piloting that composition in the slightest. And if Stage 2 is more about Widowmaker, that is something Leave does all day, every day. That is in his wheelhouse, in his hero ocean. That's something that he can pilot to a very high degree. Stage 3, we go back to Tracer and this more dive-centric composition, something that, again, MY is very, very strong on. Stage 4, that's when we start to get a little bit more of Yang Zhalong. That's when we get to apply this double sniper composition. I see Leave playing the Hanzo. I see Yang Zhalong playing the Widowmaker. Not necessarily because Leave's bad at Widow, but more because he's better at that projectile Hanzo. Now, where I will say they kind of fall off is in the playoffs. If we continue to play that Ori nice, weird single healer style. I'm not entirely too sure that Zhu Fanjun is able to play any DPS heroes. Now, China is known to be very flexible and kind of scrimmy, so maybe there's a possibility, but I don't know that they'd really be able to push too deep into the playoffs. That said, I think I've been going on for long enough, and I think my position is very well known on MY. I think they're very strong, and they would have done pretty well in Overwatch League Season 1. They might just make a deeper run than most people would expect, but I think they wouldn't walk away with any titles. A stage title, perhaps, but the 2 championship teams we have in Overwatch League carry a lot of context behind them. If we could go back and change history and change certain players' birthdays, Miraculous Youngster could have easily been an amazing team for their time. And most of that comes from the Chinese style, which I explain in depth in this video. Or, if you're looking for more alternate history, check out what might happen if Chinese mainstay Guxia joins the Chengdu Hunters in this video.